92.7. 17 minutes to the top of the hour 9 here on Sunrise. Only on your Urban Lifestyle Radio. The President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, has been speaking about plans with Elon Musk to dismantle the USAID, United States Agency for International Development. It's from the American people. They say, won't do again. We'll get into that conversation because the USAID shutdown could have affected us heavily. We'll talk about HIV/AIDS medications, antiretroviral, that is. We'll talk about TB medication. We'll talk about malarial drugs, mosquito nets. We're talking about other equipment that is used to combat malaria. We're talking about capacity building, human resources. We're talking about maternal, newborn, and child health with focus on preventing morbidity, adolescent reproductive health, commodities, and so many other things. If the USA decides that they're not going to support us anyway, in terms of the technical shutdown, assessment and assistance, public health program implementation, health infrastructure expansion, disease surveillance, primary healthcare delivery at community centers, that's the CHIP compounds, etc. Are we able to take care of ourselves? Now, specifically, the USAID gives us a total of $150 million approximately, or annually, if you look. The specific sector that supports Ghana in health is covered, education is covered, economic growth is covered, agriculture is covered, and governance is captured. Now, the US support Ghana requested for in 2025 is $138 million, right? $138 million. That's what we requested for 2025 before Donald Trump spoke. Now the question is, can we do without a US aid? Or will we be dwindling and sinking further down? It's a conversation that we must have. Before the US aid was created, how was Ghana faring? How were we doing? And what were we doing? And how were we doing what we were doing? Now that US aid is going, Trump has hinted so strongly. What do we do? Listen to President Donald Trump some 6 hours ago share this with a journalist. Listen.
So on USAID, sir, what is kind of like the message to countries that depend on humanitarian aid distributed through USAID? What is your message to those countries?
The ones that have been, the few that have been legitimate in terms of getting legitimate money will probably put it through the State Department. It'll be handled by Marco Rubio, highly respected man, Secretary of State. There's no reason for USAID. When you look at the politicians that have been in there sucking the blood out of it, when you look at all of the fake deals, I mean, look, all you have to do is get a list of all of the things you can see by the heading. It's fake, it's fraudulent, it's probably kickbacks, where they send the money and then it gets kicked back to the person that sent it. So the ones that are good, and there are not many of them, but the ones that are good, and there are some, will probably have that be handled by Marco Rubio in the State Department.
Will they take on some of the USAID workers?
They could, if they like.
Mr. President, another will it be called USAID, Mr. President, or will it not?
I don't know that it's going to exist. Why would you need it? The State Department can take care of it.
Do you think the amount of spending on foreign aid will decrease also, or just the number of employees?
It should decrease. Yeah. I hope it decreases.
Yeah, by how much?
When we have $36 trillion in debt, and we're taking care of countries that are very rich and sending aid to countries in some cases that are rich, in some cases they're not rich. But no, it should very much decrease.
Mr. President,
but it won't be the scams that you've seen.
And you're live on 3FM Sunrise on 92.7. You just had Donald Trump on the Air Force One. The press goggle on his way to the Super Bowl. And he was very emphatic. He says we are rich and they're giving us aid and they owe. US aid, Yamutu. Dr. David Kwesi Afre is Executive Consulting Secretary of the Stop TB Partnership in Ghana. Has been joined on the phone line by Ernest Amoabeng Otin, the president of the Ghana HIV and AIDS Network, Garnet. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for your time.
Yes, good morning.
Great. Great. Dr. Fred, let me begin this conversation with you and ask you, if USA decides to go, as the talks have now become very clear, what do we stand to lose as a country?
Thank you so much, Donny. This conversation is critically important, and it's good you are bringing it at this moment. Let me say good morning to our viewers and listeners across the length and breadth of this country. Let me be clear with you on this matter. It's a big blow how this happened. The presidential assent on cutting grants. If it was cutting grants, that would have even been accepted. But when it is closing down the entire agency of the United Nations, the U.S. Development Program Agency, then we have a big issue to deal with. And it's not just affecting Ghana, it's affecting the whole world. It's affecting the American citizens themselves. It's affecting the entire continent of Africa, and it is obviously affecting Ghana because the United Nations, the U.S. program on HIV is a fund that has actually helped in advancing our health system strengthening in Ghana. It has helped in procurement of commodities. It has helped in drug procurement for curative reasons. It has helped in community rights and gender activities. It has supported the Global Fund in one way or the other. It has supported civil society activities that actually support to strengthen community systems to respond to human rights violations and to support care and support to people living with HIV and TB. And so when there is a complete halt, unfortunately not even gradually. One of the early mornings, I was in a program in Kokoribia because we at Stop Tea Partnership already have 2 streams of grants that come from Stop Tea Partnership Geneva, which are all funded through the USAID system. And we just received a letter. You have a notice that is telling with immediate effect, stop all the activities of your grants until further notice. Whether you have employed the people you have employed that are working on the project, the activities you have activated, the people who need care because of the program you have activated, the community activities you have activated, the instruction of that, everything should stop. And so it's like it came as a shock to everybody. And as we speak, if care is not taken, if the Ghana's president does not take an emergency action to restore the situation that is halted so that we have a seamless procurement process, we have seamless service delivery process in the near few weeks or months. We are about to start experiencing shortages of commodities. We are about to start experiencing death even at community level. We are already experiencing staff that is laid off from office. They be asked to go home and wait until funds come. And so it's a shock to employees. It's a shock to people who are on HIV commodities, especially the antiretroviral therapy. It's a shock to people who are on the TB treatment. It's a shock to communities who are whose hope is to have life-saving drugs. And so it's a shock in the system as we speak, and we will need to do something about it.
Ms. Austin, let me bring you in. This is what Elon Musk said on X. He says USAID is a ball of worms. There is no apple. And when there is no apple, you have just got to basically get rid of the whole thing. That is why it's got to go. You know, it's beyond repair. None of this could be done without the full support of the president. I actually checked with him a few minutes. You know, are you sure? Like, yes. And so we are shutting it down. Did you see this coming?
Okay, thank you very much, and a very good morning to our listeners. During the initial Trump administration, the very first one, there were hints of, a decision to cut back on the work of the USAID and, in fact, the general donor architecture that they run in the U.S. So there were hints at that point in time. But for this one, it came as a very huge surprise. As my colleague said, on the very first day of Trump's administration, started issuing these executive orders, and for that we didn't see it coming. And also particularly because of the harshness of those orders. If, for example, they had announced that they were going to use, let's say, a 3-month period to maybe cut back on the work of the USAID or something like that, then countries could have prepared. Countries could have, held themselves in readiness. But this one just came abruptly, and it has really affected interventions in areas where they support. For us, TB, HIV, malaria, these are our core areas where we operate in, and like my colleague said, it has really thrown everything off balance. I'll give you a typical example. If you look at how we do HIV programming in this country, much of the Global Fund support is used for 13 regions. So there are 3 regions, that is Western region, Western North, and half regions. These are regions where USAID exclusively supports interventions. So with this withdrawal, it means for the next couple of months, nothing is going to happen in these 3 regions. And they also help us in the cutting of commodities, including the medications. And already we've seen that from the northern parts of the country, the regional health directorate has notified of the adverse impacts of this withdrawal. So if we're not careful, very soon we're going to have a situation where even though we have antiretroviral medications at the central and regional medical stores,
right,
because we have been dependent on them for the cutting of these commodities, we're going to have artificial shortages in the system. So it is indeed a very big blow, and we didn't see it coming in the form it has come.
Doc, now you talk about the fact that if we don't take care, and pretty much like what Mr. Orton is also saying, that if we don't take care, we may have a disaster on our hand. How big is this disaster if we do not act? And really, you are closer to power than some of us. Do you see that we have the requisite budget to be able to support ourselves if the USAID leaves?
My brother,
Sunrise on
see, we are talking about Global Fund having more than $500 million support from USA. And apart from that, we are talking about tens of millions of dollars that support and complement the Global Fund by the USAID work. And we are talking about tens of thousands of people who are on TB treatments, who are on HIV treatments. The therapy is for life. In fact, we are talking about community system strengthening work that goes on, working with over thousands of volunteers who help the Ghana health service system trying to bridge the gap between the people and the facilities. This is an amount of money. This is the funding that helps to take away the catastrophic cost of the disease on families. What it means is that you are able to, instead of carrying people to the hospital, you are able to carry specimens, you are able to communicate to the people, you are able to make sure that people sit in their homes and they receive some level of the services. Now, if all these hundreds of thousands of people are independently taken care of by a funding system, without which they have to take care of themselves fully in the processes. When we talk about TB medication, if we talk about HIV medication, they are so expensive that the individual cannot buy it. It is not possible. You can't buy it for life. You cannot. You don't have the resources to be able to do that.
Right.
Unless you are one of the high-class guys in society, a serious businessman whose finances are so good. And what it means is that if we don't take care, as if we are joking, we are not joking, you will see people trying to go down into the grave. Take it or leave it. There are communities that the medication may not reach. There are communities who are enjoying some level of human rights support systems. There are violations of human rights around health service delivery. And we have pro bono lawyers, we have community actors, we have paralegals who are supported by these grants to provide these services in the system. So it's a catalytic, these resources are actually the catalyst that makes the system run. And so when we are taking away this grant, we are talking about putting a section of people on psychological trauma for life. Some will never be able to recover. Some will be actually threatened by the mere fact that we are not likely to have drugs. And if you are not on this drug as a TB patient, for example, for 3, 4, 5 months, I mean, you won't be alive because TB will kill you. It's not something you can do anything about. Once you are infected, you die. And so HIV, you can imagine it. We have hundreds of thousands that are on HIV treatment in this country. And I can give you better and further details on the HIV. In Ghana, you always have about 6,000 people on TB treatment at a go. So this morning, you will have about 6,000 people drinking one medication, and all these are supported by this system. This is how big it is. If we don't, this human life is at stake. That's sure. Human life is at stake. Already, the number of people who have become unemployed already because of that. The number of children who will drop out of school because probably their parents are no longer going to receive salary. The number of families that are going to suffer nutrition. The number of families that are going to suffer accommodation issues. It's a shock. I mean, it's a big thing. It's a big thing that we just have to find a way to collect data. We need to get to understand it better and then program to have a relief of the situation as soon as possible. It shouldn't go beyond the month of March. If we go beyond March, we might have a bigger issue to deal with.
I see.
Thank you.
Ms. Otin, let me come to you and ask you, we are a sovereign country. That's what we say. We are independent. We are a proud member of the Committee of Nations. Do you think that we have failed our people by not setting up our own structures to say, let's find money to take care of our people, but to be dependent solely on external support, which now is obvious will be going away?
Well, that's a very, very important question. If you look at our trajectory as a country, post-independence, during the Nkrumah's era, we were actually on course to developing. But then we had the military coups that actually destabilized our progress. Post-1992, we started a fourth republic. We have been able to consolidate democracy up to this point, and we're all proud of it. But then there are concerns that we have not been able to use democracy as a tool to develop and accelerate our progress so that we can meet the demands and the needs of our population. So, to a very large extent, our development over the past decades have not been impressive. We seem not to be utilizing our God-given resources to, as I said, meet the expectations of our people. There is so much we can do when it comes to antiretroviral drugs, for example, we have the capacity to produce them in this country. In the past, a pharmaceutical company actually produced these medications in this country. So perhaps it's about time we went back to the drawing board and see how we can internally produce these antiretroviral medications so we don't have to depend on external agencies. The other issue I would like to raise has to do with certain aspects of HIV and AIDS. In 2016, during towards the end of the first Mahama administration, the Ghana AIDS Commission Act was reviewed or amended rather. And in that amended, there was the introduction of the National HIV and AIDS Fund. The government couldn't complete that process and they left power in 2017. We had hoped that the Akufo-Addo administration was going to continue and ensure that we get resources into that particular fund. However, for 8 years, we advocated, agitated, did everything, but that fund was never established. So there is a big lacuna when it comes to domestic resources to fight HIV and AIDS. We received a lot of support from the Global Fund, and the Global Fund requires us to have counterpart funding to support what they give to us. And it's almost always in the region of 15%. And consistently, we have been failing to meet that particular obligation. So, yes, as a country, I think we have not organized ourselves properly to utilize our resources for the benefit of our population. So, perhaps with what is happening now, it's about time our leaders started, focusing on how we ourselves can generate resources internally to meet some of these demands.
Dr. Fred, you mentioned the staff who work with you, and not just you, all these organizations that are looking at helping people out of their situations. What do they do now?
What can you do when you wake up one morning and you are told that stop work? You go home. And this, I'm telling you, it started from Geneva.
Sunrise on
all the staff
best in the morning
that work in our system. Just like that, one morning, everybody says, stop work. Your salaries have been frozen by Trump, and there's nothing you can do about it. The director says that all of us are affected, and so you go home. It's as simple as that. Everything, every volunteer, every worker, and that includes even some Americans. It's not like a target on somebody. It's everybody. And so those who are affected by this are just home. That's the fact. If you don't have any other source of income or business you are working with, then you are in a big trouble. And so it moved away from, it started from the head office in Geneva and went down to the community level. As we speak, USAID grants within the Stop Tea Partnership Enclave alone is supporting over 100 non-governmental organizations across Africa.
Right.
And it's in the regions of over $20 million of grants across a period of about 2-3 years. And all of these people are asked to stop work. Everybody is supposed to stop work. And so what do? You begin to look elsewhere, because the idea that came was that for us it was, okay, for now everything is on hold. We will tell you the final way forward after 90 days. And so you are hoping that after 90 days they call you and say, okay, come back to work. Everything is normal. Let's proceed. We don't know. The uncertainties are huge. People are traumatized. They are home. The volunteers are traumatized. you just don't know what to do, because some of the times you do pre-financing of some of the activities.
That's right.
For example, you are supposed to visit a client. The funds are not yet in your pocket, but because you know that you are going to be given a refund, you can use whatever you have to be able to support the client to make sure that nobody dies, to ensure that the rights of somebody is not trampled upon. And so many people have done this. They have not, their money cannot be paid. And now that they know that the money is not probably going to come, they have lost it. And what hope can they give to their client they are supporting? We are not sure what is going to happen. Let's pray to God. And so people are just hoping that this situation will normalize somehow. And so this is to tell you that this USAID program is employing a lot of people. It's not just Americans, it's not just Africans, it's not just Europeans. It's across the globe. It's a huge grant financing system that is supporting a lot of people. A lot of families are living because of these grants that exist. And so it's not just the same beneficiaries who are enjoying some life-saving commodities, who are enjoying human rights violation services, who are enjoying any other community services. But it is also affecting people who are providing these services, people whose livelihood and or socioeconomic life also hinges on this system. And so we have a huge cascade of human beings that are unemployed now because of this simple announcement across the globe, and particularly in Ghana, among civil society, among expatriates, and then also among Ghana Health Service staff who are Ghanaians. And so I'll end it again by saying it's a serious thing. We need to gather information. We need to put the data together. We need an emergency response system. And we need, after that, we need to have a strengthened system. We need to have a strengthened system. And then, as mentioned, the Ghana Commission Act, which was virtually truncated along the line. We need to actualize it. And some other things that we can suggest that must be looked at so that some of these external shocks will not be hitting us.
Great. Dr. David Kwesi Afre, Executive Consulting Secretary, Stop TB Partnership Ghana. Thank you for your time. Ms. Alton, you have the final word on this. So where do we go from here? I mean, resources, a crunch meeting with the minister, the people who are affected by these diseases. Where do we go from here?
All right. So I think for us in Ghana, the good thing is that we are now preparing our 2025 budget to be sent to Parliament sometime next month.
That's right.
So this is a good opportunity for us to revisit the Abuja Declaration of 2001. In this declaration, African countries, under the auspices of the African Union, committed to spending 15% of their national budget on health. So now that we find ourselves in this situation, perhaps this is the time for government to demonstrate commitment to that particular declaration. We want to see more resources channeled into the health sector, because the health sector is going to be the most severely impacted by this particular stop work order from the U.S. government. So we want to see more resources channeled into the area of health. And then also, you would also realize that for most of our budgets, year on year, about 40% or so, we have to rely on donor funding. Now it's about time we give ourselves realistic budget that we can domestically finance, so that we'll be able to meet the development aspirations of our people.
Thank you very much indeed, Ernest Amoabeng Orton, President Ghana HIV and AIDS Network, Garnet. And we're discussing the President of the Republic, President of the United States decision to crush USAID. Professor Vladimir Chidanso joins us on the phone line as a security and international relations expert. Prof, good morning. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, and good morning to all the players.
How did you take the news of President Trump on the U.S. aid?
Well, I wasn't surprised, and I don't blame him. Every country has a right to change policy at any point in their lives. And his America First policy means that he will squeeze every dollar to ensure that America becomes the greatest country in the world, one way or the other. And he is not obliged under any circumstance to continue to sponsor the world. So what I think he's doing is to ensure that every country tries to have some sort of self-reliance. He's told the Transatlantic Alliance, the NATO, and all other countries in the Western Hemisphere to ensure that they up the amount of budgets they use for security. It's like that security umbrella America gives is not going to be again. And so we should also expect that he is going to squeeze us one way or the other, budget-wise. So I don't blame him. I mean, it's something I was expecting, that he was going to cut American budget down to the minimum where international sponsorship is concerned. It's going to affect us very seriously in several areas, in education, in health, especially, and in several other research areas.
Now, speaking of which, the U.S. and China are the top. If the countries that benefit from the U.S. aid no longer are getting aid that they get from the U.S. in terms of HIV and economy, education, health, etc., there are fears that they may turn to China. What do you say?
Well, obviously, there's no vacuum in international relations. I mean, if you are squeezed on one side, you turn to the other side. So there is a possibility that Ghana will have to fill the vacuum from elsewhere. And already some countries must also be interested in what is happening, use the opportunity to their benefit. There is a possibility that the Chinese will up the ante. Other countries may want to fill the vacuum. And if they know that that will be new to their benefit, they would, obviously.
In Trump's own homeland, the U.S., there is opposition to this decision that he has taken. Should the African leaders not latch on that strong opposition in the U.S. to go around the table and start negotiating, maybe a cut on the volume of aid that African countries get, as opposed to a total crashing at all of the aid?
Well, America is not obliged. They are not beholden to anything. The point is that, yes, African countries can leverage this kind of opposition from inside, the domestic opposition. But they can't do anything apart from using diplomacy, lobby so that this thing doesn't happen. Apart from diplomacy, I don't see any other means of trying to gain from this. They can lobby. They can make sure that they are lobbying the senators, they are lobbying think tanks and professors and those who matter in American politics. And that's the best they can do. You cannot use the UN. You cannot use any other organization. America is even withdrawing from the UN sponsorship. It pays about 19% of the UN budget. And I think Trump's time, they reduced it. I'm not surprised that's the first time he came. I'm not surprised if he begins to squeeze again the UN, because in American sense, the realism means that you cannot have any overarching body in the world to dictate to America. So in this sense, all we have to do is to be lobbying. If we sit down here crying and blaming and insulting, it's not you that's anything. But for me, it seems this is the time Africa also must understand that we have a lot and we should be able to do what we want to do without relying on aid. Aid, actually, if you have read Dambisa Moyo's Dead Aid, you realize that aid does not allow us to do things for ourselves, to manage well.
Right.
And aid exacerbates our situation one way or the other. So this is about time we know that aid is going to go away. The dwindling nature of aid since the 1980s is that we should have known and we should have started doing something to ourselves.
This will affect in no way our health security and job security. I mean, it started in the U.S., USAID workers in Washington have been asked to stay out, and Geneva and all those other places. So job security is at risk, and then the lives of people, health security is also a problem. How should we go about it?
Yes, we need to start cutting our coat according to our size. We need to tighten our belts also, one way or the other. And I believe that most of the research that USAID goes into, labs, biolabs and whatnot, that they are more interested in for their security also, we need to cut all those things down and do preventive kind of health care, mostly. And also cut the profligate spending that we have been making in Africa. We spend a lot on unnecessary things, seriously political projects rather than economic projects. It's about time we started doing something to show that we know how to budget for ourselves and be self-sufficient. The more self-sufficient we are, the more self-reliant we are, the more we have power to talk with our counterparts, development partners, where diplomacy is concerned. But today we go begging, and therefore whatever they tell us, we take it.
But is this not too abrupt, sir?
Come again?
Is this not too abrupt?
Well, abrupt, and things happen. That's how the world is. Things happen, you have natural disasters, and there's nothing you can do about it. All you have to do is to find measures to mitigate the effect. So this is, it's like let's call it like a natural disaster, even though it's man-made. And all you have to do is to try and find measures for mitigation. And that's all. This is a wake-up call, I believe. It's a real wake-up call. Bitter as it may be, and unacceptable as it may be, the only thing you can do is to mitigate its consequences.
Professor Vladimir Ntwidanso, I thank you very much indeed for your time.
You are very welcome.
And he is an international relations expert as well as a security expert here on Sunrise on 3FM 92.7. It's 21 minutes here on your dial, your Urban Lifestyle Radio, 3FM 92.7. My name is Johnny Hughes. Here's that I have go with Yebe Wunti Yenda.